Hey there folks, in this small tips and tricks video what we're going to have a look at is how to manually edit the pivot point of a mesh in the engine. So the problem we've got here is I've got some fences. All of these are taken from different Synty packs and mainly the fantasy packs, and if we have a look at these you can see things like this one here, this metal fence, it meets perfectly up with this floor. So this floor here is set to a 0 on Z, and you can see this one, its pivot point is right at the bottom. Couple more of them here. You can see this one again, pivot point right at the bottom over in the corner, and again this one over here. This one solves an issue for us because what if our ground wasn't completely flat? Well, sometimes we might have, more abstracted kind of shapes extruding through the floor, so the bottom bit's always going to go through. We see this a lot with things like trees and their roots. But sometimes you might get something where maybe it's not meeting the floor. Maybe only one piece of it. You think this one here is meeting the floor. Maybe the pivot point, if I was to select this, is just above the floor, or maybe it's above the floor and the mesh itself is above. Now, traditionally, what we've probably had to go and do there is go to our external DCC, so our digital content creation software, such as Blender, Max, Maya, to edit this. But we can actually edit this inside of Engine. So what we need to do is we need to go over here to selection mode, and we need to go into the modeling mode. If you don't see the modeling mode, then you can go to plugins and you can go and search for that mode. So I'm going to go find that now. And you can see I've got this modeling tools editor mode, and it says it's currently in beta, but there's a lot of things that do work in this that perfectly fine. It's something that Epic are building bit by bit, and if we click on this, what we'll now get is the ability to actually edit and model and change our stuff inside of Engine. We can actually edit and create whole new objects in here. So for today, what we're just going to do is look at how to edit this pivot. So get the mesh selected that you want and go down here to pivot. So you can see it's here inside of the transform section. If you want to keep this one, what's going to actually happen is the pivot, when we change it, we're going to change over the default pivot of this mesh. So if you don't want to do that, what you could do is you could go find it in the content browser, and obviously you could duplicate it, and maybe the duplicated one is the one you change the pivot of. But here, if I go to pivot, now I've got the ability to rotate the pivot. Useful if Z isn't up on your pivot and you want to realign it to the world. We can also use these box positions. So if you imagine a box that goes all the way around the extent of this, we can choose to map it to a specific point in there, or we can use these points to move it around. If I move it right now, I've actually got a snapping of 50 on, so it's only going to move in big snaps. So here, change it to 1, and you can see I can move where that pivot's going to be. Now that's a bit of a pain to look at it in that direction, so what you might want to do is switch it from perspective to maybe the top, or in this case maybe the side. So in this one I'm going to hold down this little hotkey for you. If you hold down Control and drag the middle mouse, dragging up is the top view. So if I zoom out a little bit, you can see I've got the top view of this map I'm working in. If I go bottom right, it's perspective. And if I go to the side, you can see I go to the front view. In this case is perfect for looking at this. And right there, you can see this is the one that's holding up here, right up in the air. So I'm just going to drag this pivot point up. I've got it on 1 with grid snapping on. Obviously, you can turn the grid snap off if you want to be more precise. But if I change that and now go to accept, that has become the new pivot for this mesh. So now when I'm looking at this, and I'll go back to perspective view of it, you can see that pivot point is just above the floor. And if I was to take this model and press N to snap it down to the floor and then just move it down just a little bit, there you go, so the pivot's back on the floor. We can obviously come over here and type Z equals 100 as well, and now you can see all these bits of this model are now meeting up with the floor. So if you've got any meshes that are kind of floating above the floor, it's really easy. We just go selection mode, modeling, pivot. We can edit that pivot, so I'll just drag it up a little bit. So I'll go up a couple here, accept, and then now it's fixed. So let's go back to 0, and you can do that, as I said, for anything like doors. Maybe you've got a door mesh where the pivot's in the middle of the door. You could use this to move it out to the actual hinges, and then obviously it will rotate around that pivot going forward. Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing to access more of my Unreal Engine content.